had him on camera earlier today. He's playing Green Devotion with a light touch of red for Domri and Xenagos in the deck. This is also a less extreme version of Green Devotion. There's no copies of Burning Tree Emissary in this list. It's all mana creatures into large threats. So we watched him earlier on camera against Kent Ketter, who was playing Red Devotion. Reid was able to win games where Nykthos wasn't really involved. He just ramped into big stuff, 4 copies of Genesis Hydra, 2 copies of Arbor Colossus. Interestingly enough, no copies of Quarter Calling, a reprint from M15 that a lot of people anticipated would make a big splash for Green Devotion. Reid with 0 copies in his 75.
Well, right, you'd have to think as you cut Burning Tree Emissary that Court of Calling goes with it, right? That's one of the cards that really enables that Court of Calling to be good.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, we are underway this game. Remember, these players are playing for the privilege of being the undefeated player on day 1. An Elvish Mystic starts for Reid Duke. He's going to get Thought Seized by Jake, though. And both players are on 6 cards. Thought Seize can be a backbreaker against Green Devotion strategies.
Often, their hands are either, one critical piece of mana, a mana creature that allows them to get to their big stuff, or a lot of mana with only one big thing to do. Reid with one of those kind of hands.
Yeah, Jake actually is going to let him keep the Genesis Hydra. He takes Sylvan Caryatid, and I wonder if that's if there's more to come. That to me, is there a Lifebane Zombie or another Thoughtseize on the way? Answer is yeah, there's another Thoughtseize.
Only 1 main deck copy of Lifebane Zombie in Jake's list, but of course, 4 copies of Thoughtseize. You see the second one here to follow up the first one, and now Reid very light on total resources. Though Jake without a second land. Yeah,
Jake's on one land. He did have to take Nylea, God of the Hunt there. Mainly, I would think because once Nylea's on the board, which it would have been on the board next turn, Jake can't, as Mono Black, can never get it off.
Yeah, it's there to stay for the entire game. And for the time being, this Genesis Hydra is really not that threatening. So if Reid wants to cast it, as a 2/2, let's say, Jake's probably fine with that. But the Nylea creates all sorts of problems over the long term.
Yeah, so Reid is in a bit of a balancing act here now. How big does he want to get this Genesis Hydra? When do you pull the trigger? Is it 3? A 3/3 is a pretty decent creature. Do you wait until 4? Because then maybe if you hit Pelucranos, you can keep it.
Yeah, when we had him on camera earlier, he waited until he hit 15, which felt like about the right number.
15 seems pretty sweet.
But he might have to settle for a smaller number this game.
Right, Jake's still stuck on 1 land. I don't dislike him keeping on the draw a 1-land double Thoughtseize hand. That seems pretty decent. You see Jake here hit Genesis Hydra for 3, and boy, does he hit some good ones. He has a choice right now.
Domri is pretty much the best conceivable card that he could hit right now, and if it's not, it's because there was also a Courser in those cards.
Right, so he actually got the choice of the 2. He opted for the Domri, and despite the fact he got Thoughtseize twice, Reid may, thanks to the fact that Jake's stuck on 1, may run away with this game before Jake gets a chance to really play it.
And you can reassemble a hand pretty easily from here. And Reid's deck is, of course, a ton of creatures. 23 lands, 9 spells, meaning 28 creatures. Domri's got a really high hit rate in this deck.
Yeah, I really like what Reid's done with this deck. One of the criticisms of the Green Devotion decks I've seen is that, quote-unquote, there's a lot of air in the decks. There's these big finishers, these Garruk Caller of Beast-style cards, and in between them, you play a bunch of Burning Trees and Mystics. And there's been a lot of different approaches on how do you mitigate that? How do you bridge the gap? We saw some players do it with Eidolon of Blossoms. Instead, Reid's doing it with Red Planeswalkers.
It's impressive, and this deck I've watched matches over the last couple months where it's had Garruk in play, plussing it, and still losing the game because all it's fighting is mana creatures.
Right.
Reid's gotten away from that kind of structure.
Reid casts Pelucranos for the turn. Jake now has hit lands 2 and 3. He bio-blighted the Genesis Hydra last turn. He now has the Hero's Downfall. Can have a choice of targets here between Pelucranos and Domri Rod. I think he's going for Pelucranos as he didn't do it on his turn.
And no reason to let Reid plus this Domri if you were planning on killing it anyway.
Well, the Domri pluses, but it does not draw him a card. Reid, I believe, with only 2 cards in his hand. So if Jake can survive here, and that's a pretty big if, but if he can do it, he still could be in a pretty good spot. But now things are going to get harder. Reid going to go ahead and cast a Genesis Hydra for 6. Remember, he did get an extra land off that one, extra mana thanks to Nykthos.
So
pretty weak 6, though. He only got Sylvan Caryatid.
For as good as the first Genesis Hydra was, that's as poor as the second one was.
Yeah. Hero's Downfall takes care of Pelucros, but Reid making threats faster than Jake can kill them. One thing you can say about Mono Black is while they have good generic answers to almost anything, they don't have many 2-for-1 kill spells.
Nor are they very good at catching up when they fall behind. They play a lot, as you mentioned, a lot of 1-for-1 and a lot of 2 and 3 mana 1-for-1. So when they're stuck on 3 lands like this, it's hard for them to chain together multiple spells in a turn. Hard for them to catch up from this spot.
Yeah, Nightveil Spectre was a play for Jake Mondello. That does mean he's not going to get Domri ulted, but there's still a problem that Reid has 7 power worth of creatures on the board. Jake at 13. This Genesis Hydra is a 2-turn clock. Reid opts to plus Domri. He had the option between plussing Domri and fighting it with the Genesis Hydra. Just goes for cards and draws Arbor Colossus.
Yeah, the best possible draw here. That's a bunch of green devotion there, which through the Nykthos he can use to fight this Nightveil Spectre, and Jake is really far behind now.
Yeah, so the Arbor Colossus, he can cast it and monster set to have it throw a I always like to think that it's throwing a tree, you know? It plummets the Nightveil Spectre. Reid swings in for 6. That's going to be game 1 in Mr. Duke's favor.
Yeah, that was a pretty impressive display of Genesis Hydra. I mentioned this earlier when we had Reid on camera. You know, we've seen some lists, or I've seen some lists of green devotion that have a Genesis Hydra, maybe 2. This feels like the first list that's really focused around Genesis Hydra. It has a lot of quality 4 and 5 mana cards to hit. So these mid-game Genesis Hydras, you know, you have 6, 7, 8 mana. You're not going for broke, but it's a huge play, and it usually comes along with something else of substance. Reid, that initial Genesis Hydra he had, finding the Domri is really what shifted that game around.
Yeah, and what you said is exactly right here. So if you look at Reid's deck list, it is 4 Genesis Hydra. It still has your 12 green mana creatures you'd expect: Mystics, Satyrs, Caryatids, Coursers. But then there is a different direction to it, right? It's only 1 Garruk Caller of Beasts. That's a card that you just see a lot more of in green devotion. 2 Nissa Worldwaker, and then 3 each of Domri Red and Xenagos the Reveler. It's
a less polarized deck. The green devotion lists we've seen historically have been all about Nykthos, all about Voyaging Satyr, making 1,000,000 mana and doing crazy things. Reid's list still has an element of that, and Genesis Hydra facilitates those sort of draws as well, but it can also play just regular nuts and bolts magic, which is something that I believe green devotion has historically failed at. What happens when you're playing against resistance? What happens when you mulligan? What happens when your initial mana creatures are shot down? The traditional builds of green devotion do not play well under those circumstances. The direction that Reid is taking the deck gives him a lot more play, even when he's under some amount of resistance.
All right, well, going to the sideboard, we'll start with Reid Duke, because he's playing kind of the newer deck here. And he has just more Planeswalkers, and I guess some cards that are harder to 2-for-1. So looking at his board, what I would like, he has 2 Chandra Pyromaster. Those seem pretty good against a mono black style strategy, just that they're more Planeswalkers. He does have Scavenging Ooze. That's not too bad if Jake's killing all of his things. And then the card I really like, he does have a 1 of Hornet Queen in his deck.
Hornet Queen seems excellent for this matchup.
If you get to cast that against mono black, it seems really difficult for mono black to take it off the board.
On the other side of the table, Jake has 2 copies of Drowned Sorrow, 3 Duress, 3 Doomblade, an Erebos God of the Dead, a Liliana Vest, a Farika's Cure, 3 Lifebane Zombies, and an Narwhal Connections. The 3 Lifebane Zombies and the 3 Doomblades, those are naturally very easy to bring in against a green creature deck. I'm curious to see what Jake wants to do with these Drowned Sorrows. It is good at breaking up Reid's mana, but he does have Sylvan Caryatid, Courser Crufix, a variety of large creatures.
Right.
It's going to be very good against a percentage of Reid's draws and very poor against a percentage of Reid's draws. So I'm curious to see if Jake wants to go down that road or if he's happy just with the Doomblades and the Lifebane Zombies.
Well, this is what I think is really interesting. So I was working with some people for the last Pro Tour who were working pretty hard on green devotion strategies, right? And one of the first things we came up with, and we were playing like the Eidolon and Blossoms style decks, is that how does this deck beat Drown in Sorrow? It was just, you know, mono black seemed like, okay, maybe a little bad of a matchup, but palatable. And then we played post-board games with Drown in Sorrows, and we're like, okay, I don't want to play green cards into this. This is, you know, this is miserable. He casts Drown in Sorrow and it kills all my things. My Eidolon, Burning Trees, Satyrs, Elves, just terrible. And yeah. I think Reid's build has navigated a lot of that. I don't know how much. I mean, you know, is Jake still boarding them in? Well, probably. Like, the blowout you can get with them is still pretty big.
They still seem probably worth bringing in, but the fact that Reid has access to Domri, to Xenagos, to Nissa, and just to some large mid-range creatures mean he's not nearly as susceptible to this card as, like you were mentioning, the conventional historical builds of green devotion.
All right, well, we're underway game 2. Jake Mondello on the play. This time, both players get to keep 7. He does get to start with Thoughtseize. Once again, I still think the best card he can have here. He sees 2 Coursers, a Hydra, and 4 lands, including Nykthos.
This is a good example of a hand that is where Drowned Star does not provide very much.
Absolutely. Reid's just going to start off on forests. What I think is actually interesting is that Reid keeps these style hands. So this is like, I've always thought of Green Devotion as this big synergy deck where it's, it's a lot of moving pieces. And like that hand was pretty fair, right? It's some lands and some 3-drops, some lands and some coursers.
Yeah, nothing too fancy.
We see another Thoughtseize. This time, Reid has boarded in Mizzium Mortars. We see a second courser taken.
It wouldn't surprise me if Reid's cut some of his low-impact green creatures in general just to sort of blunt the impact of Lightbane Zombie. And if that's a plan, then a card like Mizzium Mortars, which is, fringe in quality, still may be good enough to bring in.
Yeah, I mean, Mizzium Mortars certainly gives you a lot of surprise value against pack rats. I know that getting pack ratted is still very scary here. And you see, there is still the problem that when you're playing an all-green creatures deck, Lifebane Zombie is just a beating. Jake plays his second Lifebane and nabs the 3rd card this game from Reid's hand.
Somewhere, Brian Kibler is throwing his remote through his TV monitor.
It's really hard to play Magic when your opponent's actually just taking every card out of your hand. Gray Merchant here drains Reid for 4 after Lifebane Zombie swings in. He's down to 13. And playing off the top of his deck, never really got a chance to cast anything but a Sylvan Caryatid. He mortars something, that was neat, but yeah. And a swing with the team here from Jake. Mutavault joins the fray for an extra 2 damage. Reid takes 5, drops to 8. And as almost one-sided as game 1 seemed, game 2 looked like it's going to be one-sided going the other way. Jake makes a Desecration Demon, and that may just be it.
Lifebane Zombie is probably not the ideal card for Reid to be playing against.
Second Lifebane Zombie's worse. I don't know if any green deck, this is one of the frustrating parts about playing green and standard right now, right? Is that if your opponent plays Thoughtseize into 2 Lifebane Zombies, can you beat that?
Yeah,
that's miserable.
I was playing red aggro strategies for a while, and then I decided, I'll try, White Weenie for a bit. And then I played against, Doomblade into Lifebane Zombie and immediately shut down Magic Online. He's like, I'm not doing this anymore.
This sucks. All my things are gone.
I'm playing with Gnarled Scarhides or Fire Drinker Satyrs, but I'm not touching Soldier of the Pantheon. And that Lifebane Zombie, that's the reason why.
And in a flurry of Desecration Demon and Lifebane Zombie, Jake Mondello takes game 2.
I'm not sure which card I'm most excited about to be rotating out of Standard. I still think that my answer is Sphinx's Revelation.
Oh,
but
ow.
Lifebane Zombie makes the top of my list.
Why?
Because I like control decks.
All right.
I like control decks that win quickly, establish control, and then quickly win the game. And Sphinx's Revelation is so if you're playing Cruel Ultimatum or you're trying to sweep the board and then play Kaiga, I'm fine with that stuff going on.
So now I just have to play a bunch of Elspeths.
Yeah, whatever the case may be, just don't draw 7 and then play
elegant.
Don't draw 7, then untap, play a land, and draw 8.
Can we not appreciate the elegance to Sphinx's Revelation that these control decks, they are single-minded, right? You remove things, then you draw cards, then you remove things, then you draw cards, and you just repeat this.
I can
forever
appreciate
until your opponent eventually loses.
Me and you, veterans of the game, we've been around for a really long time. I think we can appreciate the elegance that you're describing. I think for a lot of Magic players and a lot of people watching at home, the elegance is somewhat lost. It's not.
Oh man, the elegant. That's why I like things like combo decks. They're beautiful, right? They have one game plan. And they just execute it every game.
Well, that's cool the first time. That's less cool the 100th time.
It's cool that you can just keep doing it every time.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So, to get back to the initial point,
all right.
I think it's Sphinx's Revelation, but Lifebane Zombie is close to the top of the list.
Lifebane Zombie can be pretty... Yeah, I think I agree. Lifebane Zombie is pretty restrictive in that it's really hard to play around it, right? If you're playing any of these 2 colors and creatures, and certainly current Magic design is really incentivizing you to play creatures. Whether or not you're aggro or control with them, that can be your own you know, most decks like have green or white creatures.
A lot of it has to do with opportunity costs. Like Fiendslayer Paladin's pretty powerful against a class of red and black decks, but a 2/2 lifelinker for 3 means that if you're putting this in your main deck, it's because the metagame's really skewed, and you're going to pay a huge cost in a lot of matchups. Lightbane Zombie is a 3-power Intimidator for 3, makes it an eminently main deckable card,
Right.
and that puts it to a very different space.
All right, game 3 underway. Reid is on the play this time, once again with Elvish Mystic. Is he going to get Thoughtseize back? No, this is the first game where he gets to keep his cards, at least until turn 3. We'll see then. And Reid with a turn 2 Courser shows Genesis Hydra on top of his deck. He is going on all cylinders at the moment.
Though this still can get broken up by just spot removal. But this is a good start for Reid, and not getting Thoughtseize is a big deal.
Yeah, no plays from Jake. Sorry, he waits until Reid draws a card and then is going to go ahead and Doomblade the Courser.
All he wants to do there is know about Reid's draw.
I like the timing of that, knowing his opponent has no way, you know, there's no Ranger's Guile hiding out.
Probably not.
Probably not. Just grab some extra information. He knows that Reid next turn will draw another Courser. Now, when your opponent, I'm going to throw this back though, when your opponent's playing Domri Rod, do you want to give him that information? Like, because Reid gets to know that there's a Courser on top too, and what if Reid that turn had been like, Stomping Ground plus it?
It's also, you know, the other thing to think about there is you see Genesis Hydra in Reid's hand. If it's a cheap permanent, let's say it's an Elvish Mystic on top, Reid might be happy to fire off a small Genesis Hydra. So that's a factor too.
Yeah, he's going to Thoughtseize here. He sees Reid's hand. He has Nissa, Xenagos, Genesis Hydra, and a land. Remember, there's no red source right now. Reid is in position to make a Nissa next turn, and I think that's where Jake's got to be ready for that one. And now he's deciding, he makes his third land, Mutavault. He's deciding between Pack Rat and Devour Flesh.
This seems like a pretty good spot to stick a Pack Rat here.
Yeah.
Reid not threatening too much. It does change if Reid finds red mana. I mean, then a lot of his hand's unlocked.
He knows Reid won't for one more turn because he knows the draws Courser.
Well, I mean, he doesn't know about the following card.
Right, the following card could be red, but he can't make Xenagos this turn.
Yes, correct.
You see Underworld Connections hiding out in Jake Mondello's hand. Reid's going to battle with Elvish Mystic, take his free point of damage, play Courser, see if he can find the red, and there it is waiting,
there it
Temple
is.
of Abandon.
Reid.
Plays it.
The slow rally, you know?
He plays it. Right now he's scrying. Does he want a third Courser? How many Insurance Courser of Krufix is too many? There's got to be some urgency on Reid's side because of Pack Rat, right?
Yeah, although Courser does a pretty good job of gumming up the works for a while here. The second one does even more work. The little points of life gain might matter. I'm not sure if this is better than the average draw. And in fact, it almost certainly is, but Reid may need something of higher impact.
Yeah, it's better than the average draw, but how good of a draw does Reid need? Like, is it good enough?
And it looks like Reid says, yes, it is.
All right, Reid draws, has a fourth land. So we see now, Connections, Devour Flesh, another land, and what looks, I believe, to be Whip of Erebos.
Whip is a card that's a little surprising to see in Jake's deck post-board.
I would agree.
Not a lot of removal in Reid's deck, nor is, gaining life really that significant. It feels like perhaps one of the first cards to hit the bench here.
Well, he does have the upside that it's actually just a Pack Rat right now.
Yeah. Once
right?
Pack Rat's in play,
You can play a lot of bad cards when you have Pack Rat.
The subtlety of what you want to be playing with doesn't really matter too much.
Yeah, it's just another Pack Rat. It's fine. Even if it was a really good card, it might still be a Pack Rat.
Yeah.
But right now, I actually don't. It doesn't seem like making Pack Rats is going to be fast enough to deal with what Reid is up to. Between Xenagos and Xenagos' ability to make a lot of mana and then go into Genesis Hydra, Reid is threatening to do something like that.
Yeah, and the clock is taking a lot of the tools in Jake's hand. I mean, he doesn't have really any other resistance. This Devour Flesh, that's not worth a ton here. The Whip of Erebos, that's just a rat. He doesn't have anything of substance in his hand right now. It's all rats, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't play Underworld Connections to tap that turn, which means he's committing to rats.
But yeah, definitely dangerous.
He's going to go ahead and discard to make Pack Rat. All right, and yeah, not on the removals plan at all. Devour Flesh, now that there's a Xenagos in play, really of low quality. He's going to go ahead and start with discarding that one.
And Jake can maybe make a little bit of headway on the board using his creatures to threaten the Xenagos, but as you mentioned, it's giving Reid a lot of time to set up a big Genesis Hydra. And Jake's hand's very soft right now.
Right, next turn, just as soon as next turn, Reid has a huge Genesis Hydra.
Right.
A swing with both pack rats. They go at Xenagos. And Reid's gonna have to block them both if he wants to keep Xenagos. Remember, those rats can become 4/4s.
He can also put his Satyr token and Courser in front of a rat and make some headway on the board this turn.
Right, if he does that though, then he is gonna lose his Xenagos.
Well, he would have to chump block the other rat.
Yeah. Interesting bind here. So Reid would lose 2 creatures, and he's gonna go ahead and do exactly what you mentioned there. But it does mean that if he wants to plus Xenagos next turn to make a big Genesis Hydra, he is losing a fair amount. Right, he's losing a lot of his mana because the Xenagos doesn't plus for as much.
Yeah, but he gets to protect his, he gets to make some inroads on the board here. Long term, he's preserving quite a bit of his life total by getting a rat off the table.
Plays another interesting. Jake does make the 5th land, passes the turn. His last 2 cards are Underworld Connections and a Whip of Erebos. Reid down to 1 creature in play, just the Satyr token. And pack rats have traditionally been very good against this green-red deck.
Certainly when they are supplemented by removal. On their own, Green Devotion can overpower a pack rat, but when it's backed up by some removal spells, it's very challenging.
Yeah, but there hasn't even been that much removal on Jake's side, right? Not recently, at least.
Yeah, Reid just hasn't gotten anything significant going yet.
Yeah, Reid's gonna go ahead and play a Courser. He seizes a Domri rat on top of his deck, which means he can plus this Xenagos. If he wanted to, he could have, right? He could have plussed Xenagos to. Nope, he wouldn't have had enough mana to get the Domri. Okay,
right.
He makes a Satyr with it instead.
But for the time being, this is a pretty good setup for Reid. I mean, now with the Domri on top, he maybe has access to more sources of card advantage. He may be able to fight these rats depending on how Jake breaks up his attacks and activates and so forth.
Jake swings both rats at Xenagos again, but it's, Jake's kind of locked into this line now, but it doesn't seem like this line is making enough progress, really.
Yeah, I'm sure Reid is pretty happy to run back the turn they just played.
Yep, it's a Satyr in front of one rat, Satyr, Courser in front of the other. Yeah, it's good. They're going to repeat that dance from last turn.
Well, this is even better now because Jake's going to be losing a second rat, assuming Jake doesn't have something significant here. He makes the rats into 4/4s. The one rat dies to the Courser plus Satyr block. That makes the rat that just got double blocked by the Satyr and the Alpha 3/3. That also dies.
Once the first rat dies, the rat with 3 damage on it will die as well.
Right.
And that's exactly what happens. He makes the 3rd rat, activates Mutavault, and now 2 rats go down. So once again, Reid is left with just a Satyr, but this time Jake only has 1 rat.
And as you mentioned, he's sort of been locked into this line of play, and now Reid has the option of Domri and fighting right now if he wants to get rid of the pack rat problem altogether. It's not even clear he has to. Just by plussing the Xenagos this turn, casting Domri, maybe finding another chump blocker, Jake may not be able to attack next turn, and then Reid really gets to start pushing forward.
I have to think that Reid's going to go ahead and eat the rat while he has the chance. It seems so strong.
I don't know. It depends what else is going on in his hand right now. But
I mean, he might be happy if Jake wants to discard cards to pack rat. Reid might just be thrilled with that.
Absolutely. It's not clear if Reid just makes another Satyr, plays Domri, pluses, and says go. What is Jake going to do with that rat next turn?
We will see. He's going to start with Genesis Hydra. This is a Hydra for 4. He's not even going to make the Domri. And the 4th card deep, I was going to say, he's going to only hit a Sylvan Caryatid, but the 4th card deep is a Polukranos.
Forget what I said about the Satyrs blocking. I think Reid might be doing another one in attack, yeah. I mean, now he can also make mana, cast Domri, fight through one of the large creatures.
Yeah, this
was a huge swing this turn. Reid has done a brilliant job of navigating this game. I mean, it looked like things were going pretty rough. Jake was on the verge of overwhelming with pack rat, but Reid was slogged through those double blocks, lost a lot of his board, but has maintained enough resources to work the game to this spot.
He's going to make exactly that line. Casts Domri, makes 3 mana with Xenagos, casts Domri, and is going to go ahead and swing before fighting.
I feel like if I get to watch Reid Duke play frequently, I could see myself doing this job for a very long time. It's you know, Jake Straw was pretty solid this game. You know, he played fine, but Reid did such a brilliant job of working the game to this spot. I mean, look what the board looked like 2 turns ago.
I mean, Jake played Thoughtseize into Doomblade into some Pack Rats, which is generally a very good strategy against Green Devotion. And Reid's draw, while good, did not seem excellent, but yet...
Rewind the tape and go to 2 turns ago, and now we're here.
He never seemed like he was in trouble.
Yeah.
He's got to be the whole game, comfortably spend the whole game. Jake this turn taps out for Gray Merchant, and Reid looks like he's off to the races here.
Yeah. So he has 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So he can actually make mana through Xenagos and fight with Pelucranos, if I'm counting the mana correctly.
He is 1 short. He has 3 creatures and 6 lands. So
yeah,
he can only, 9. It's 9. You're right. He can monsters for 4. And if he does that, then Jake takes 9 from Pelucranos plus an additional 6. Jake would go to 1.
I'm just gonna lean back. I'm not gonna really weigh in too much. I just want to see what Reid comes up with. I want to let the viewers watching know he can fight the Gray Merchant if he's feeling so inclined, but he may find something better.
The question is, what does okay, so that line probably wins, and there's a lot of lines that probably win, but is there anything you have to play around? Like, what are the concerns? What's the doomsday scenario?
Yeah, Reid is not here to probably win.
He's here. He wants to
win. He wants to win and find the best line while he's doing it. Just an incredible swing, and Reid had this. Of course, funding the Pelucranos off of the Genesis Hydra, that's a big deal in how landslidey this game got. But Reid sculpted out this line ages ago.
Really impressed right now with Genesis Hydra. It's a card that when it first was printed that I'll admit I did not think was very good. And I'm definitely being proven wrong the more I watch these decks.
Well, I like the way that Reid has taken the construction of the deck into a much less extreme route, and a card like Genesis Hydra still works if you have your Nykthos draw, you have a bunch of mana, can still do spectacular things. But in these games, he's also just firing it off for 3 and 4 and 5, and it's doing good work there as well.
And there you have it. So with that win, Reid Duke moves to 8-0 on day 1 with Green-Red Devotion. He defeats Jake Mondello. Reid is one of your undefeated players here at day 1 of the Invitational.
A player also with some significant Invitational success naturally. Top-8 the last one. Had a win in, I can't remember if it was Los Angeles or Atlanta, but he had an Invitational win a little while ago. And, of course, on the short list for best active player